Hello and welcome to Stuff and Things with Chris. I'm your host, Chris. Today, I'm going to talk about the crazy, the wacky, the insane, the #1 most popular show on Netflix in the U.S. called The Tiger King. First off, this should be an indictment of our entire American culture. That instead of watching educational shows or wonderful shows of drama and maybe even some positivity, the #1 show in America is a reality docu-series, 7 episodes long, about crazy rednecks doing all kinds of wacky stuff at animal parks spread through 3 different states. This show has a cast of characters that it would be hard for Jerry Springer's writers to come up with. The main show follows the Tiger King, aka Joe Exotic, who describes himself as a gay, gun-shooting cowboy Tiger King. He has an animal park where he has tigers, lions, and a bunch of other animals, chimpanzees. He's got all kinds of stuff. It's in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. He has a bunch of ex-felons who work for him because they all needed jobs, and probably because when you're in that type of a situation, you just keep the job you have because it's too hard to find another one. That kind of gives Joe a labor pool that will pretty much do whatever he wants. He's horribly narcissistic. He has his own internet TV show that he broadcasts live every day from the park that nobody watches. The guys who produced this documentary kind of ran into him through some other story they were working on, and then they realized they had gold. And so they decided to spend 5 years following this guy around. Then it went super crazy. Okay, I mean, just off the chain. Now, Joe is such a huge narcissist and wants publicity so bad that he actually comes into contact with a guy who used to work for Inside Edition, an incredibly reputable news source. And this guy, his name is Rick Kirkman. And he decides to produce a reality show that he's going to pitch to television networks all about this guy. And he kind of comes up with a nickname for Joe Exotic of the Tiger King. And man, Joe runs with this, man. It's on billboards. It's on everything. He puts it on everything he can. Now, Joe Exotic is, if nothing else, a salesman. Now, how successful of a salesman might be debatable, but in his gift shop are all things Joe Exotic, including everything from condoms and underwear to country western CDs that aren't actually sung by him. I don't know, it's like Redneck Milli Vanilli or something. I'm not even sure how to take all of that. But the episodes, all 7 episodes, they show one of Joe's videos where he lip syncs a song sung by someone else. That's usually always about tigers. I'm telling you, it's just bizarre. Now, the tone of this show starts off as kind of the first 2 episodes introducing us to all the various characters, and you're just kind of like, what in the world? These people can't even be real. You know, people are scrambling on their phones. Is this a real show? Is this made up? It's all real. These are real people. This is a real business enterprise these people are in. A category of wildlife entertainment that not many of us really understand or have been around or know much about. But as the series progresses, it takes a very dark turn. Okay, this is not a TV show for kids, okay? Just because it's got tigers in it and yay, we're talking about tigers, that's not what the show's about. The show is about the complete and total moral dysfunction of all the people involved in this show. Every single one of them, okay? You basically see I guess you could call it rise of the Tiger King, and then what is undoubtedly his fall. And how it's just hard to really believe the stuff that happens. The whole basis of this particular docu-series ends up being focused on Joe and how he runs his business. And he runs it based on another guy whose name is Doc Antle. And Doc Antle he considers himself world very famous. I don't know. I mean, I remember seeing the guy on The Tonight Show 3 or 4 times. Yeah, he's not Jack Hanna, but he thinks he is. And he trains tigers, and he's brought them on, late night televisions. He's had tigers in various movies and other animals in movies. And so he considers himself like the animal trainer to the stars and Hollywood's most famous animal trainer and all this nonsense. But he's really not. But he thinks he is anyway. So this guy Antle came up with a system to generate money for his exotic animal park in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And that was breeding tigers and lions and other big cats and then letting people hold them and pass them around and take pictures with them. Now, Doc Antle figured out a way that he could make big money off of this because he charges people like $300 or $400 for this, maybe up to $600, depending on what kind of encounter they want with the baby tiger. So one of the people who understood this business model was Joe Exotics. So he has decided to set up the exact same kind of a park in rural nowhere, Oklahoma. Unfortunately, he has no resources to do this. Doesn't have enough money. So he's trying to cut corners all over the place while at the same time breeding 500 to 600 pound man-eating tigers and lions and taking their babies and shoving them in people's faces and being a huge showman and all this kind of stuff. It's clearly not what these kind of parks were designed to do. There's an argument to be made that if you can get interactions with people with what are wild animals, they will then become advocates for those animals. I understand that. Zoos do that a lot. But they don't take tiny babies away from their parents and shove them in people's faces. Okay? That's not really what you do. I mean, I'm not going to go introduce an alien species to humans by shoving a 3-day-old child in their face and hope that that child doesn't get some kind of random sickness and drop dead. Okay, it's not really how you want to do that kind of a caretaker role, if you will, but it's a way to make money, and that's what Joe Exotic has figured out. This is a way to make money. And one of the real themes in this show is the manipulation of the people in charge of 3 parks. Now, one is Joe's park, the other is Doc Antle's park, and the third is Carol Baskin's park, and she claims to run a rescue big cat center. But all 3 of these people employ the same basic premise. They don't pay anybody anything. Now, Joe and Doc Antle pay a pittance of like $100 a week for the people who are their employees. Most of their employees live on the park. They don't ever even leave the park. Some of them aren't even allowed to leave the park. But not to be outdone, Carol, the respectable one, who's endorsed by PETA and all kinds of other groups, she pays her employees $0. $0. They work 12-hour shifts, 365 days a year. They go through a training program that involves some sort of wearing of t-shirts of different colors. And as they progress up the, I guess you could say, corporate ladder, they get a new t-shirt. It takes multiple years to get each t-shirt. So at the end of 5 or 6 years, you get to wear a blue t-shirt. And this allows you to actually be a keeper. Now, how you could talk hundreds of people, because she literally has hundreds of people doing this, into coming and working at your park for no money whatsoever, while you, the park, charges money for people to come in, and it's not $5. It's expensive. And you don't give any of it back to these people who are volunteering, but you're not even giving them per diem, but they're also living there. They're also there 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, just like these other parks. So how are they supposed to survive? I don't know. She doesn't care. She doesn't say. She's a multimillionaire, whatever. So she, as a person who has this park of rescued big cats from various places, decides that she's going to go after these exotic animal parts that, as she sees it, are basically cub factories. They are producing baby tigers and lion cubs and all the other kinds, cheetahs, leopards also, for the express purpose of generating money for the park. And the animals are mistreated and the babies are taken from their mothers. And so she starts targeting individuals, and she targets Joe Exotic and his animal exotic park in village of Oklahoma. Now, Joe gets wind of this, and man, this is when the meat of the series takes place. Okay. By the second episode, you realize that this is basically a show about two opposing ideas and two opposing personalities, and they are trying to basically destroy each other. Okay. She and Joe really butt the heads. Okay. Joe seems to just go off the deep end about it. Just off the deep end. Okay, he's obsessed with it. He goes and pickets where her place is. He's doing crazy videos of having fake representations of her shot. I mean, he pulls out guns and shoots dolls with her picture on it on the head and says he's going to kill her and all this just wackiness. The people in the park are starting to realize that he is really just obsessed with this, and he's obsessed with being famous, and he's treating all of his employees poorly. There's a whole saga of Joe's personal life where he's married to not one but two guys, both of whom he met when they were 19 and basically were, I think, kind of runaways. It's just a real train wreck because, you know, Joe is gay, but these guys really aren't. So it's this weird thing where he's giving them all kinds of gifts so they stick around, but they're cheating on him on the side because they're straight. And I mean, this is where it really starts to take a downward trend into non-positivity and no joke stuff. And this is when you start to realize, man, there's some really dark stuff going on here. But he's not the only one. Carol, the do-gooder. Not only is it revealed that she's basically using free slave labor to keep her park afloat, but her husband, who was a multimillionaire, magically disappeared one day, just a couple of months after he tried to file a restraining order against his 20-year, the younger wife, Carol, who threatened to kill him with a knife and then said she had a gun as well. Magically, he disappeared 2 months later, and no one's ever seen him since. But there's clearly some really fishy stuff going on with Carol, okay? Not to be outdone, there's Doc Antle. So he's got his own little menagerie of employees who just magically all happen to be 19-year-old girls when he meets them. He ends up with this sort of polygamous swinger lifestyle thing going on where he's got 3 or 4 wives or partners, as he calls them. I don't know, it's like Big Love from HBO, only with a guy who runs an animal park. Bizarre. Okay, so that's really weird. That doesn't make him look real good. Makes him look like he's, you know, kind of taking advantage of these young women, and then they're kind of stuck and semi-brainwashed, and it feels kind of like a cult. Further into the series, about episode 5 or so, you start to get the underpinnings that Joe has made some poor decisions. There's this scheme where Joe keeps putting the name of the park and the ownership of the park into someone else's name. And so he has this guy, Jeff, sign on the deed as the guy who owns the zoo. Now that turns out to be a mistake, because Jeff then says, all right, well, now I'm running the zoo and you work for me. Yeah, he's still fighting. He still has a vendetta of unbelievable venom against Carol. And this is when you start to hear the rumblings that Joe might be prepared to hire someone to kill Carol. Yes, kill Carol. Hire a hitman. Now, like everybody else apparently running an animal park, Jeff is also an ex-con, and he has a guy working for him, a dude he employed, who has also served time, and this is who Joe gravitates to say, hey man, you think you could take care of a problem for me? And this last 2 or 3 episodes of this series go into the explanation of what he was willing to do, and did he do it or didn't he do it? And oh man, this is a I know a lot of people on Facebook are like, hey, this is really funny and kind of a train wreck. It's funny. This really isn't. Okay, by the time you finish this 7 series, man, you got to take a shower. I mean, the sleaze and the undercurrents of just this whole world of animals being used for profit and shipped all over the place and treated unfairly just make your skin crawl. Yeah, it's a big mess. It's really kind of upsetting to understand that this kind of stuff is going on, especially with tigers. There are more tigers in captivity in the U.S. than there are alive in the wild, which seems bizarre. I mean, a lot of zoos have tigers, but zoos are accredited institutions. They breed tigers, and the goal is to try to reintroduce those into the wild. You're not just trying to make money off of them. But, in this world of these kind of off-the-grid exotic animal parks, it really have to question whether or not it's worth what's going on behind the scenes to go hold a baby tiger. That's really what I came out with it. The first part of this is just off the chain Jerry Springer, and then it turns real dark. So if you think it's going to be laugh, funny, you're not going to be laughing by the last couple episodes. Okay. I'm going to suggest, if you would like a more uplifting look at tigers, just watch a Netflix show about tigers. Okay. That'll be a lot more positive, and you can watch it with the kids. However, if you want to go down the rabbit hole of crazy, this show will show you that, and you'll get there quick, fast, and in a hurry. Okay? Now, you may have nightmares for 3 days after that about abuse of tigers and all the stuff that people are complicit in and not. But, hey, you were the one who watched it. Now, that's all I got for this episode. The Tiger King. I'm going to give it a thumbs up with a warning. It's not fun and games. It does show you a dark part of human psyche. And what happens when someone becomes so obsessed and self-absorbed that they are willing to basically do anything to stay on top. Thanks for watching. I'll be back later with some more videos. Thanks.